Hello, good morning, and this is still Unfiltered Conversation on Cleveland TV. My name is Frank Kalibemida, and as always, Cleveland TV in Diaspora is an online platform created with a vision to connect you to the rest of the universe. Please don't forget to sign up with us on www.cleveland.com. All right, today I have as my guest Mr. Lade Tunji Omotola. He is a son of Professor JELILI Omotola, the former Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos, and will be discussing his book, Memories of My Father. You're welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much for having me, Rosemary.
Good to see you here. But we'll start with this. Who is Adetunji Omotola? We know you as a global thought leader. Apart from that, who are you? And at the same time, what prompted you to write a book on your father's legacy?
Okay, thank you very much. I am the second son of my late father, who is the seventh Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos. My background is in sociology, mass communications, and law. I graduated from the University of Lagos with a degree in sociology in 1988. I then traveled to the United Kingdom, where I studied a master's in communication research, and then I went on to study law. After my degree in law, I managed to become a stockbroker in London before I moved back to Nigeria to go and study to become a lawyer. And so since then, I've been in South Africa. I've worked in the financial services. I've worked in the wine industry. And then I call myself an African media personality. So that is Adetunji in a nutshell.
That's a beautiful resume. All right, now we'll go to the other question that I asked. You actually didn't answer, which is the reason you had to write a book on your father's legacy. We'll come to the father's legacy. We'll discuss that extensively. But why did you do that as a son of the man or of a man that was once dead? What prompted your interest?
Yes. It's okay. You see, my father died suddenly in 2006, on March 29, 2006. He died suddenly, and I found out about 7 hours later when my mom called and said, he's gone, he's gone. So because he didn't give us any notice, and because he lived exemplary life, and also because the story of my father was always told only about UNILAG, University of Lagos. They never spoke much about himself as a person, his life before he became a lecturer, and also family life and other compartments of his life. So I felt that I could tell the story in a more balanced way and more objective. Well, because I knew him beyond who he was in terms of the big man running a university, a professor of law, a senior advocate. I knew him as a family man, a generous man. So I felt I should document my own side of things. But there are parts in the book that I had to take from the internet. So it's a compilation of my thoughts, my experience with him, even in South Africa, when he was on exile after he resigned as the Vice Chancellor in 2000 on September 19th. And he was in South Africa for 3 years. Even that part, I spoke about that. I wrote about that in the book.
Okay, so that we'll take a holistic view of the book now itself. All right, your father is known as one of those instrumental to the development of Nigerian politics and the educational system. Can you just share with us most of his legacies?
Okay, well, let's first start with the university. He was a lecturer in the university from at least 1970, 71 thereabouts. And he was a lecturer, even he rose to become the dean of the Faculty of Law of the University of Lagos twice. And as dean, he implemented various changes. In fact, he was the editor of the Private and Property Law Journal when he was the head of Department of Private and Property Law at the Faculty of Law. And those journals were highly regarded. And in the contribution that they made to the development of law, it was very significant. That was when he was in his faculty. But of course, when he became the vice chancellor, he had his own agenda called the OMOTOLA agenda, from infrastructure to internally generated revenue to the welfare of staff to even the work to study program, distance learning program, where it was actually the distance learning program that then got him into trouble because they said that he didn't get permission from the National Universities Commission or from the Minister of Education. And I think his enemies used that to get rid of him. So that was what actually, those were the reasons why I felt one needed to write this book, because the legacy part was very profound. In fact, some of my friends who I know, they say, if not for your dad, my dad wouldn't have owned the house in Magodo. Magodo is an area of Lagos. It's a new layout, about 30, 40 years old. So my father was instrumental in many of his lecturer peers having homes in Kayetoro and Magodo specifically. And there are many other instances of his generosity. In fact, the 5,000-seater multi-purpose hall at the University of Lagos, 5,000-seater, was built by him. And the reason why he built it, he told me at the time, and I'm sure he told many other people, that he wasn't happy to see students not being able to sit down and write their exams. And you probably be aware in Nigeria, because of overpopulation, the pressure to go to university is very significant in Nigeria. So they over admit students, and those students don't have seats to write their exams on exam day. So he built a 5,000-seater hall, which has now been named after him, and is a huge revenue generator for the university in terms of IGR.
Wow. I know this has been captured in your book, Memories of My Father, but your father actually later on in his life went to the educational system. But you said he was a graduate of law. So what influenced his passion for law?
Well, look, as I always say, in fact, my father says that if all his children can read law, he'll be very happy. And I think about six of us ended up, because he had a large family. I have 11 siblings. So I'm the second of 12 siblings. And so we're quite many. But I think in terms of, him reading law, how he got to read law. If you remember, Rosemary, that the first Nigerian lawyer, Shapara Williams, qualified as a lawyer in 1897. That's more than 100 years ago, almost 125 years ago. So Nigerians, particularly those in the Southwest, they had early contact with the UK, because our colonial masters as Nigeria came from the UK. So there was a lot of movement in what they call the Golden Fleece. They called it the Golden Fleece at the time. So Chief Obafemi Awolowo, people like Rotimi Williams, so many lawyers, Fani Kayode, they would have studied in the UK. Adetokunbo Ademola, the first Nigerian Chief Justice of the Federation of Nigeria. So when you look at it, everywhere, if you didn't study law, you study medicine, or you study engineering or accounting. So courses like history and courses like business administration, a lot of people were not really studying them during that era. So that's, I think, what's informed his quest to study law. But of course, it was, sometimes you show a promise that whether you become a lawyer when you are in secondary school, the subjects you choose, like literature, Latin, commerce. So I think those subjects also pushed him in the direction of law. He didn't do physics and chemistry and well, probably did biology, but he was not a science student by any means.
All right, your father did study law, and at the later end he migrated to education. Would you mind sharing with us the reason why he has to migrate to the educational sector?
Well, look, law is part of education. It's a field of study. Education is just the structure that one will employ to take through, various processes of learning or information in a structured manner. I suspect that given that my late father, JELILI OMOTOLA, lived in the UK, and when you live in a country like the United Kingdom that has a reputation for qualitative education and very polished, polished way of doing things. I suspect when my late dad then went into the university, he would have seen a lot of things that he could fix in the university. And the university is quite a big thing to manage. There are so many things involved in management, non-academic staff, academic staff, and there's a lot of groundsmen, gardeners, and security. So if you're not, my late father was a good manager. He was a property man. He had a lot of properties, and he was a good manager of men and materials. In fact, up till today, some of the staff that he employed about 40 years ago, they're still working for the family. So he believed that he could do a wonderful job in education, managing students and staff, and making sure during his tenure, there was never a single day that the university was not in session for 5 years, no single day of strike. And many students are very happy that that was the case because it went very fast. You will be aware that in Nigeria, a normal program of 4 years can take between 5 to 6 years if you're unlucky. So he was able to make sure the academic calendar was on time, lecturers were paid well, welfare of students was paramount. He commercialized the university. So he was able to generate IGR with Unilag water, Unilag bread, Unilag soap. So he did a lot for the university. That's why they were calling him Mr. Magic. Omoti, the students loved him. So they called him Omoti or Mr. Magic. So, and he was very close to the students and he even gave them contracts and they could work while they were students as well. So there was a lot of goodwill for him and for the university because everybody wanted to then send their children to the what they call, everybody loves to call Unilag. So they never say University of Lagos, Unilag. So yes.
Wow. That was very, very impressive to the man, Professor JELILI OMOTOLA. All right, we all know him as a professor. We know him as a man that had passion for the educational institution in Nigeria. But you are obviously his son, so you will know him more than each and every one of us. What is that particular thing about your father that you will want the audience to know that we might not have been aware of?
Okay, he loved to dance. The man was a very crazy dancer. He had a raucous laughter. So when he laughs, people are angry because he's too loud. The laughter is it's so loud, it's crazy. And he also was a very generous, cheerful giver. So very cheerful giver, very happy to give. And he was a family man. So he raised all of us, his brother's kids, younger brother, older brother. It didn't matter. And, yes, and he was very wealthy by Nigerian standards because he had drivers, cars, wives, cooks. So I think he was blessed in many ways. And he was a devout Muslim, went to Mecca a few times, lesser Hajj, the bigger Hajj. And also he spread his message of property law beyond Nigeria. So he went to Tutu, he was in Maseru, he was in Nairobi, he was in, I don't think he was in Aborone, but he was certainly in Harare, he was in Durban, he was in Cape Town, he was in Limpopo, he was in Texas, he was in Venezuela. Well, that's as vice chancellor. He traveled around the world as a scholar and he gave some very powerful articles. And one of those articles he gave in Harare in 1990 between February 12 and February 15, 1990, was the implications of land reform in Zimbabwe, the Nigerian experience. And that article is one of the articles that I'm looking for. I've been looking for it for about 7, 8 years, and we're praying to find it. Yes, it's a very seminal article because he gave that article when he was the dean of the Faculty of Law or University of Lagos in 1990. And that was about 4 days or 3 days after Nelson Mandela was released from prison in South Africa. So that is the kind of influence that his work had on the continent beyond Nigeria. Zimbabwe, 10 years after independence, my late father was delivering a lecture on land reform in Zimbabwe. And 10 years later, Robert Mugabe grabbed the land from white people in that country. And so up till today, there's sanctions for that on Zimbabwe, which has affected the economy and the people. So that's how significant that article and my father's work was and still continues to be, because land is the biggest asset that anyone can have in their lifetime. It's the most valuable asset, land, and it causes countries to go to war, and people fight over land even as we speak. So that's how profound his work was, and we continue to remember him. And we thank you for this interview.
Yes, all right. Thank you so much. We are still in the confine of your book, all right, Memories of My Father. We'll take a short break for now, and we will return to discuss fully on this. Audience, please don't go away.
Let's sell on your behalf. If your item sells on our web shop, you pay a 10% commission plus the transaction fees, and you get the rest. Register now at www.shop.clevenard.com. Start uploading your product and services. We can really sell it on your behalf so you can carry on working on the things important to you. Are you looking to sell any type of product or service and you want to avoid the hassle involved? Selling can be an arduous and time-consuming process. At Clevenard Super Shop, we will be happy to take over the workload of promoting or selling your products or services. All you need to do is to register at www.shop.clevenard.com, enter your shop or vendor information, and then start uploading your product and services. We will do the selling. Now, be ready to get more sales and awareness. Start making more money from your business with Clevenard Super Shop by partnering with us today. Let's sell on your behalf. If your item sells on our web shop, you pay a 10% commission plus the transaction fees, and you get the rest. Register now at www.shop.clevenard.com. Start uploading your product and services. We can really sell it on your behalf so you can carry on working on the things.
All right, you're welcome back to the program. We are still with Adetunji Omotola, son of Professor JELILI Omotola, former Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos. All right, sir, before we went on the short break, we'll try to analyze the Nigerian educational sector as it stands. All right, and you agree with me that from your father's time till now, we've witnessed significant changes in the sector. What we used to have there, most of them, we no longer see them there. Now, what do you think would be your father Nigeria as it regards politics and in the educational system?
Look, I think my old man's country, the way my old man would look at the situation in Nigeria now, he would see it as a very sad scenario, because during this time, a lot of things were still in place, things were still, even the currency, if we look at the Nigerian naira, because the test of any country is when you look at the economy first. Because people have to, when you go to school and you get a job with your qualifications, so you want to earn a living and, settle down and, take care of your family and build your own fortune if you can. But with the volatility of the economy in Nigeria. I mean, Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, there's a case that has been awarded against them for 5 billion naira to revert the former chairman to his position. The NNPC doesn't remit monies to the federal government. It doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of dislocation in terms of how the economy is managed. And the ordinary man on the streets his life is not improved, and everything is expensive. Even Okada is expensive, food is expensive, tomatoes, there's a plague at the moment that's affecting tomatoes in the country. There's so much challenges in the country, security, even for students.
Exactly.
It's such a tough time politically and economically and educationally in the country, and that's why a lot of young people are leaving. Even they just came up with a law. There's a bill in Parliament by Honorable Ganiu Johnson of the APC in Lagos, in Oshodi, Solo. They want to stop they call it curbing the brain drain. They want to stop medical doctors from leaving Nigeria for 5 years after they've been, they've qualified, but they won't give them.
Exactly.
So it's a very tough time, and the country. My father would have looked at it. He would have been very concerned, deeply concerned, as anyone should be about the country that is the largest economy in Africa and has the biggest population. But mismanagement and waste and embezzlement of the public purse, embezzlement of funds, has been the hallmark of administration after administration. So it is not surprising that we have a broken politics, what we call the politics of division and ethnicity, and divide and rule, just so that you can attain power. So you have a scenario where in a country where you have Muslim, Christian, and others, some political parties decided to choose leaders who belong to the same faith so that they can win the elections and get power. So it's quite a crisis of significance.
A lot of confidence. It's all right. Hearing you speak, who can say that you've actually been following or you are following the footsteps of your father. All right. So if your father was yet to be alive today, or let's hear you speak on behalf of your father now, what would you think, or what would be your recommendation to the scenario in the country as it stands now?
Look, I think maybe you will be thinking they should have a government of national unity because there's a lot of division. These elections, this 2023 elections has been the most keenly contested. There was a lot of fire for fire attacks on people's personalities, even people's wives were assaulted, and there was a lot of anger in the country towards certain individuals who wanted to contest again, or even political parties. They almost split up. In fact, leaders of political parties decided they would not support their own flag bearer, and that damaged some of these parties, some parties' fortunes. But I think the solution to Nigeria's problem, if I look at it from my own perspective, because I wrote this book about my father, the solution for me is that those Nigerians who are outside Nigeria must become politically active. Firstly, based on what Obama told us, President Obama. So wherever a Nigerian finds themselves abroad, whether they're in China, whether they're in Brazil, whether they're in Portugal, or Ghana, or Libya, or Zimbabwe, they must become politically active, because the business of politics is too serious to leave it to politicians alone. Or should I rather say the business of governance is too serious a business to leave to only politicians, because after all of us are citizens of the country, and we're in a democracy, and we all have one vote each. So that's the first point. So diaspora, I came up with the concept that diaspora will lead, because if you think about it, Nigerians in diaspora are doing very, very well in almost every endeavor, from sports to finance, and even those at home are also doing well in music and the arts. But what is missing is there's no deep connection between Nigerians abroad and Nigerians back home. And the only way that that can happen is when we become more politically active. Because once you're politically active, when you go back home, you automatically propel yourself into the hearts of the people, because you have to now engage the people. But if you're not in politics, how do you engage the people? That is why politics is more powerful than even economics, because that's how you engage the people. You can be a businessman and not have anything to do with the people. But if you want people to vote for you up and down the country, you have to go and look for them, and you have to talk to them, and you have to promise them that when you get there, these are the things that you're going to do. And based on those promises, they will now vote for you. And that's what is called a manifesto.
All right, let's go back to the book now. Then let's say your father's ideal, okay, as outlined in the book you've written. All right, now do you say it? Do you see the ideas outlined in the book as having effect, positive impact on the society of today?
Yes, of course. Look, anyone who reads the book will first of all get a sense that this man did not fall off a tree. He had parents. He came from Ijebu, Yoruba ancestry, southwest Nigeria, born in Imopa, in Ijebu Ode, to Alaji Sumola Buraimo Omotola, with my grandfather, and his mother, Alaja Saratu Anyonyinke Ajibewaji Omotola, aka Mama Imopa. So my grandfather was called SB Geyser, and my grandmother was called Mama Imopa. And when she went to Mecca, he changed to Alaja. So from Mama Imopa to Alaja. And we call her fondly Alaja, because she's very, very interested. A powerful woman, had no fear. So in terms of the book, you get a sense of his ancestry, his legal career, the battles he had as JELILI in the office of Vice Chancellor. You will also get his life as a socialite. I talk about him, my father and I, and you also get a sense of his South Africa trip and his legal work, all of the work he did writing books and teaching law, conveyancing. It's all in the books. It's in 10 chapters. And there's a foreword by Professor Akin Oyebode, who, eloquently put it. In fact, I lifted his foreword from the book that I had written or compiled on my father's work in 2011. So this is actually my second work on my father. The first one was, yes, I compiled most of my father's scholarly articles from 1971 to about 1990, and I published them in a compendium, which was launched at the University of Lagos, but then it was called the Multipurpose Hall. That same hall has now been named after my late father. That was done in 2017. So the work continues to be promoting his legacy. We have to do the work. He talked about you either publish or you perish. So he believed that as a writer or an academic, you publish or perish. He was a man of conviction, very hardworking. He sacrificed a lot for his family. He built a lot of properties. He sold some of them because, as I said to you earlier, the naira became very weak. So when you want to pay school fees for your children, and if you have many, like my father had, 12 children, you might have to sell one property just to pay school fees for one child to go and do a course for 4 years. And that's how Nigeria's economy has gone declined last. Yes. So the naira is no longer able to chase when I was in university, I was getting 150 naira a month. 150 naira today cannot even buy a meal in Nigeria, maybe even a bottle of Coke. So if you cannot buy a bottle of Coke with 150 naira, or South African rand with 150 rand, you can buy a lot of things. You can buy potatoes, you can buy pepper, you can buy onions, you can buy even Coke as well with 150 rand. Then it means we're in trouble in Nigeria. So the economy, my father would have been very worried about the state of the economy, the cost of living, the hardship that ordinary Nigerians have to go through, high unemployment, high levels of insecurity, poor medical facilities, bad road conditions, even waste management, and even the state of the nation, the division and the ethnic bigotry that we saw during these elections, particularly in Lagos State, which is supposed to be the commercial capital of not only Nigeria, but West Africa, and the level of intolerance there. My father would have been very disappointed.
Wow. That was a beautiful one. It's all right. Let's go ahead with it. And you'll be talking about your father. Is there any interest of you taking ahead your father's legacy? Let's talk about you a little bit.
Yeah, well, look, I think I'm like my father, but I don't want to be a professor of law like him. But I think what I'm doing already, I'm doing the things that he's done. I lived in South Africa. My father lived in South Africa. I was born in England. My father lived in England. I went to study Unilag. My father lectured in Unilag. My father was called to the Nigerian bar in 1973. I was called to the Nigerian bar in 2001. My father wrote books. I've written a book on my father. I've published 2 books now on my father. My father spoke a lot about the Land Use Act, criticized the Land Use Act vehemently in the late 70s and early 80s. I am a regular contributor and speaker on many issues around Africa, economy. I speak a lot on insecurity, particularly in the Sahel, Nigeria, and other countries in Africa. I also speak about the relationship between South Africa and Nigeria. I speak on xenophobia. So I'm doing my own professorial work in a different way without going to, deliver them in the university or write for a journal like my father would have been, or lecturing and marking scripts and, getting promoted within the university system. I'm doing mine in a different way. And I'm also somebody that enjoys wine. So I'm a wine consultant, and I'm also in the media. I'm an African media personality. So I have my own media platform, Afrospace. And you can find my book on Amazon, JELILI OMOTOLA, Memories of My Father. So I've built my own profile as well over the last 2 decades, yes. So I'm not somebody who's new to fame as well. But I think my father, because he was vice chancellor, is still more famous than me. So, which is okay.
That's a beautiful one. It's okay. It's a beautiful one. All right, my last question will go to for someone that wants to have access to your book, Memories of My Father. How can they access it?
Okay, it's JELILI OMOTOLA, Memories of My Father. It is on Amazon, www.amazon.com. It's there. I think it's quoted in dollars. I think it's also available in Lagos, but I think I have a few hundred copies. For those who love to have the physical copy, they can contact me on the South African number. They can send me a WhatsApp on +2783 584 0694. And those are the platforms where they can get the book from. Amazon, and from a Lagos number or a South African number, they can WhatsApp that number, and I would respond to them very quickly.
Yes, sir. But you also forgot him to add Clevener.com. You know, you can actually sell your book on Clevener.com.
Oh, okay. www.clevener.com as well. Sorry for that. Thank you for reminding me.
Exactly, sir. You're welcome. All right, that's all we
Thank you.
have for today. Thank you so much, Mr. Adetunji Omotola, for being my guest this morning. And just we draw the curtain here for today until next week when we'll come your way with another guest on this program. My name is Frank Kalidovido. Have a blessed.